Welcome back to The Graphic on the Laurence McKenna channel. It's good to have Jamie Slevin today from ESPN.com.
Laurence, great to be here, mate.
Just sounds better if I say like a thing. If from BBC, right?
We could do a different one every time.
Yeah, exactly.
From ITV4.
Yeah, from... No, I had a really bad one, but I'm not going to say that.
From Setanta Sports.
Yeah, from Setanta Sports. Was it
Setanta?
Setanta Sports. Santander was a bank. Santander? Yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
Speaking of big European powers, let's speak a little bit about the European Super League. Now, for those of you who know a lot of the context around the European Super League, I don't think I need to go through the top headlines. But broadly, there were some very big breakaway clubs, or clubs. Terming the breakaway clubs feels a little weird to me now. Basically, there was a group of clubs within Europe who decided that they weren't happy with the hegemony of FIFA and UEFA within European competition. And that whilst some of their domestic league issues were issues, they could compete in the Premier League or La Liga or whatever, and also compete in a European Super League. Broadly, the concept I didn't really have that much of a problem with. But I did have a problem with the fact that A, it felt like a closed shop. B, it felt like it was something that had been snuck through and didn't feel very democratic in football terms. C, it was something which didn't really seem to be for the fans. It felt like more of a profiteering kind of, global capitalist or, venture capitalist kind of thing. And I also felt that it wasn't well thought through.
There was a certain naivety to not consulting fans.
Right.
And there was a certain naivety to the idea the leagues would just accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a certain naivety to the idea that it would be possible to have domestic leagues where 3 or 4 of the teams were becoming infinitely wealthy in a way that was guaranteed.
Right, that was the other point that I didn't really make was the money that it would guarantee to these big sides would obviously give them somewhat of a rocket, which would then allow them to invest in the squad, and basically become NFL franchises rather than football clubs, which felt much closer to home.
It's interesting too, because I don't know whether there'd be an appetite for Real Madrid, Bayern Munich if it was every week.
This was the real conversation at the time. I think there would be some appetite. I don't know if it's every week. Let's go through some of the events and then we can talk about the actual formation of the European Super League. So anyway, very quickly, a lot of people cycle backwards, not least FSG, John Henry and Liverpool. Other owners put out statements as well, some on video, some on letters, some more sincere, some were wearing a gilet. Some came from their ivory castle, as far as I remember. It's like, you don't help yourself by being like, Vossi. It just doesn't help. But what happened in that time was, there was kind of like a soft sort of, okay, we'll put the toys away and we won't talk about this anymore. But it was a shot across the bows of UEFA and FIFA. And it basically was saying, we're not happy with the way that you govern the game. We're not happy with the way that you run the competitions. We want to change. And it forced UEFA's hand into changing the formation of the league, at least a little bit.
And this is the really interesting trick. UEFA and FIFA, for the first time ever, got to play the, hey, we're all about the people.
They made a documentary about it. Have you seen the documentary on Netflix?
That's sickening. No.
It's one of the most, you've got to go and watch it. It's made by, I think, is it Agnelli who is the Juventus guy and also the guy at the top? Yeah. He's in it. There's just loads of people who look super loaded Central European bourgeois guys who are just like, yeah, it was terrible for the people. And I was just like, wait, what?
It's like, fuck you. You've not given the amount of money that filters through from European football into the leagues. They'll say it's millions, and then you look at it and it's like 0.1%.
Yeah.
And by the way, the expansion of the footballing calendar, so the Club World Cup we discussed last week, not consulting players, fans, managers, overloads, anyone, all for the cash, and then going, guys, look at these money chasers. They're not talking to you, the people.
Yeah.
And interestingly, it was like, best of enemies.
Yeah.
The enemy of your enemy is your friends. There was this weird union between the proper Chelsea fan walking down the King's Road protesting the thing.
And UEFA.
And UEFA, who were just like infinitely bald and infinitely Swiss.
Yeah, and infinitely rich. And I felt I think I remember there was a clip at the time which shows the person on the channel that commented yesterday who said, Laurence will never go viral, which I said, basically it's choose your billionaire, pick your poison, lesser of two evils, these kind of things. And at the time, it did pretty good numbers because a lot of people were sort of like very much against the European Super League, but acting as if the clubs, the Premier League was this righteous organization that was leading us into the 21st century and that we'd all be right if we just stuck by the league. And I guess from my perspective, I felt like it was which billionaire do you prefer? Do you prefer the billionaires who care about you slightly more because they need your business? Or do you care about the billionaires who are slightly more removed from you but run the competitions?
I mean, we won't get into this properly now, but there is this underlying threads in this conversation, which is legacy fans versus new fans.
Right.
And I think FIFA, particularly at Chelsea, they've looked at the NFL, this is a point you've made, and said, oh, that's like 3 times the value of the Premier League. We should be doing more of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I read this like slightly deranged article in The Guardian 6 months ago about how Chelsea was stopping subsidizing their away fan buses.
Really?
Now, this was going to save the club about 250 grand.
Right, which is 1 week's wages for...
Or pick someone you've never heard of.
Yeah, and then
And
they
I
made
really mean that, by the way. Someone you've actually...
Never heard of.
We quite like football here.
Yeah.
We've never heard of them.
Yeah, right.
Anyway,
Moises who?
Yeah. And the point being, well, how many Fofanas do Chelsea have? It's not a trick question, but no
2?
one knows.
3.
It's either 2 or 3.
Sure.
The point being, so why save the money?
2 Fofanas?
But why save the cash? And the answer is, it's the first brick in the wall. This was the thesis.
Sure.
Against legacy fans. It was basically trying to say, listen, we're trying to create a narrative and lower your expectations.
Wow.
So when you look at something like the Super League, the people that lose are the people that just would miss the trip to Goodison Park on Boxing Day. They want to go watch Villa play Newcastle at pick your poison, you know?
Right. So if you drain the stadiums, if you do take less away fans, if you slowly chip away at the morale of the common man or whatever you want to call it, or, you know, as you say, legacy fans or working class people, however you want to term it, even people like you or I who would go, all right, well, how am I getting there then without bus on the day where the train's bad? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like, you know, with any brand transition, you sort of set the atmosphere. You like, if you declare war, it's that Mark Corrigan bit from Peep Show. You know, you have to ready the UN, like,
right.
And that was the idea. Anyway,
Right.
the Super League was kind of a blow in that direction because the traditional fans, by which I'm defining as people who've been watching football for 20 years, maybe going to occasional games, maybe have a season ticket, maybe do away games, didn't like it. But there was an idea that other people who were new fans or perhaps not fans yet would like it. So then there's this tension between the two.
It did have a Michael Bublé, I just haven't met you yet kind of vibe, where it was like, you're just not a fan of us yet. And it's kind of like...
I love her. Have you seen the music video?
Oh, no.
It was his real wife. And I
really?
used to watch, I was 13, like wide-eyed.
He did marry a very beautiful woman, I think, at the time. I don't remember who it was. But I remember, like, there are certain men in celebrity that give kooky-looking guys some hope. Michael Bublé is one of them. Michael Bublé is, like, good-looking in the way that the guy who's the lead in Suits is good-looking. But, like, Gabriel Macht, I think his name is. But he's not good-looking. He's not Brad Pitt good-looking, if that makes sense. And he has something where you go... Got some... Michael
Bublé is both, and this is a weird thing to say, he's both better and worse looking the more you look at him.
Right. Yeah,
you know
yeah.
I mean? You're like, oh, you're gorgeous, but quite strange.
He looks like a cuddly owl to me.
Who like has a bit of charm.
Yeah,
he
like
can riz his way up a tree.
But you can also, I think if Pixar animated his face for some weird reason, you'd think he was an evil character, and I don't know why. Because he seems, I don't know. Pixar doesn't have any room for much of what Michael Bublé provides.
It's the eyes.
It is. There's slightly, and I have this problem, slightly too sunken, I think.
Don't sunken eyes give someone a depth? It's like, what have you seen?
I just wish I found my depth. So Michael Bublé loves the European Super League, I think is broadly the headline here. But what I'm saying is, it was basically a ploy to, broaden the conversation around football to casual fans rather than taking care of the core and hoping that other people want to join with tighter relationships to the game, softer relationships to the game, exploratory relationships to the game from fans who maybe don't know the game yet, who will buy a shirt, who will go to a game, who will pay a monthly subscription, who will pay to watch, the league pass or whatever it is in your country, are good. Committed fans, it's almost like a curve of benefits. The curve goes like that rather than like that. If you're super committed, you don't pay hundreds of thousands of pounds. That makes sense.
Yeah.
You're just super committed, but you still might pay a same season ticket as someone who's partially committed.
Yeah, and we all understand that because I am a very casual fan of the Bundesliga. I won't sit down and watch, in 99% of cases, a mid-table clash, 36th game week, Hoffenheim versus whoever, but Werder Bremen.
Right.
But I would watch Dortmund, Bayern, fifth week into the season.
Right.
So we can all engage with the part of ourselves that is more casual, and we don't need to judge it. It's just when you're running football, and this is going to bring us on to today.
We'll do in a second. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I have two theories about the European Super League, neither of which I think are particularly groundbreaking. First one, I actually think we'd be better off in the long term in football with the European Super League. I think it lets those owners get their rocks off, and it lets people get that investment. And it also empowers and possibly breaks the current system that we have to hero the smaller teams, to say, hey, the Championship's actually really good quality in the UK. You know, the second tier is really well supported in Germany or in this country, in that country. Let those guys go off and do whatever they want. A lot of people can't afford the tickets to go to those games week in, week out. A lot of people don't feel as connected to those guys. In the Championship, in League One, League Two, whatever, all the way down, you can feel more connected to the players. You can have the relationship that maybe you believe you have with the players that you believe love you. Like, you know.
What I was gonna say was, it's very difficult to treat the Premier League and the European Super League of equal importance. But I agree with you. If you say, listen, the top 6 sides in the country can go off into Hollywood and play Bayern Munich every week.
They can make the NFL of Europe.
They can make the NFL
what
of
it
Europe.
is.
I don't know how it would be for a fan of those sides, pros and cons. But for a fan of the footballing pyramid and English football, if you said to me, Jamie, Super League happens, wage cap in English football, and now you got 7 winners in 13 years. Forest win it 1 year, Everton win it 1 year, Newcastle win it 1 year. The Championship ends up being more support. Take my money.
Right. And I get it. Like, you know, I partially support Liverpool because my granddad, well, like wholly because my granddad supported Liverpool and my dad supported Liverpool and all those kind of things. And I do like the idea that we're kind of walking in the same footsteps to the same stadium, or like that, you know, he's somehow like weirdly proud of me. He's put in the same team he supported. Like it, you know, it's the same as if you, like, you know, we all grow up with a religion or a belief system broadly. You know, it's where you're born kind of dictates, or which family you're born into kind of dictates which God it is that you're praying to, or do you know what I mean? Broadly. I know that's kind of sounds cynical, but I'm saying it in a nice way.
Well, yeah, it's like the big variable of what God you support is. 99.9999%
where you're born.
What family?
Yeah. Yeah. Who'd have thought you, God, what's the opposite? What's the like chances that you're right and you live in exactly the place where it says you're right? Like, that's crazy.
And it's crazy because all these people are right next to me, but all those people over there are wrong.
Yeah, exactly. But what I also love about that is that's such a crude interpretation of religion in the first place. But it's also one that I run into a lot. But it's also, that's relevant to football in a sense, because it's kind of how people felt at the time of the European Super League and still around the European Super League about, hey, we are, I support my team because of, you know, I am my team kind of thing. I don't think the European Super League stopped because they protested. I think the protests were lovely. I think they're a great show of force. I think they're a great show of unity. I think they're a great show of what fans are capable of. But I think the European Super League stopped because it was bad PR. Some of the protests maybe helped with that, but it was also a poorly cooked idea. And it was one which, this leads me on to my second theory, I don't think was real. And I don't think the European Super League is, I think it is a real idea. I don't think the one they pitched then was real. I think the European Super League is a far off idea. But when I read the PDF, when I looked at the logo, when I looked at the people involved, when I looked at the fact they'd left out Bayern and a couple of other sides who, guess what, were close with UEFA, who, guess what, were part of the controlling forces within Europe, I realized it was a political move. And that actually, the European Super League existing, it exists in our, it's Christmas, it exists in our mind, because if you say, and this is what these guys need right now, if you say, well, we've got a European Super League coming in 5 years, to Barcelona, Real Madrid, people who need investment, people who need money, people who need to keep up with the super oil rich, Juve, all those guys, you end up with, guess what? A higher valued club that someone will pay you more money for. Okay, someone who then go, well, our media is worth this amount then. Everything gets inflated.
I hear you, but here's my problem with it.
Go on.
It's, on the first instance, it's too much social capital to burn. Well, look, either
I don't think they thought they'd be burning that social
okay,
capital.
so that is the
and I don't know if they care about that social
that
capital.
is the caveat. The caveat is maybe they just misunderstood the reaction. But instinctively, I think it's too much social capital to burn to test the water. Also, you can just test the water. You can skip out the middleman. You can just ask people what you think.
But they never did that. And that was the other aspect, was if this is truly run by and is, it is what it is, I think
There'd been an 18-month period of working out what ideas,
focus groups,
have
all
you
these kind of things.
Have you ever seen Vice? It's a movie. It's same director as The Big Short.
Yeah.
Adam McKay. No.
Yeah, with the... does Thingy wear the fat suit in it? Or?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
It's Dick Cheney. I mean,
Yeah.
in the film, they have this thing where they're trying to...
Christian Bale.
That's
That's a good movie.
It's brilliant. Yeah.
Really good film.
They're trying to, the Republicans at the time get this PR guy.
Mhm.
And there's rooms where they go, how do you feel about inheritance tax? And everyone says good. And they say, what do you think about death tax? And everyone goes, bad.
Right.
Or they say, global warming, scary. Climate change, less scary. I'm open to what you're saying. If they really wanted to push this 18 months ago, they would have had that process happen.
And they would have had a PR company all over it and all these kind of things. It's the same as in Yes Minister, I think it is. Basically, I'm making the same point as you, but they basically say you can make a survey say what you want it to, where it kind of goes. So if they'd have launched and said, we surveyed fans, and the fans actually said they quite like this. We surveyed real Chelsea fans who said they quite like it. And the survey goes, are you happy with the kickoff times in the Premier League? No, you're not. Okay, you're not happy with it. Okay. Are you happy with how much you have to pay for a ticket? No, you're not happy with that. Okay.
Are you open to change?
Are you open to changing the structure of the leagues to take it away from the super rich who run the Premier League and UEFA? What, you don't like the billionaires that are against us? You're for that. Okay, great. Would you be for, do you like the Champions League? Yes. Would you like to play more in Europe? Do you like the glamour of it? Yes. I'd say you're for the thing that we're pitching.
There's also this other thing, whereas if you ask people a question about raising tax or lowering tax, and the first 10 questions say, do you think people should pay their fair share? Yes. Do you think it's bad that people struggle? Yes. And then you ask about upping taxes.
Right.
You get one answer. And if you ask the opposite questions, you get the other.
Exactly.
Nick Hornby does, on the... I couldn't help but think about the tension between the fans they're asking and the products they're creating. Nick Hornby in Fever Pitch has this really interesting bit where he says, I used to pay X for a ticket at Highbury. I mean, this was in the 80s, so it still wasn't expensive compared to today. And now I pay Y for a ticket at Highbury. But what happens when the middle-class fans that come in essentially replace the product they were buying?
Right. This is part of my point.
Because nobody buys a ticket at Highbury if there's not the North Bank.
Right. And this is part of the issue, right?
Yeah. So when you say to people, hey, don't you love football? Amazing atmospheres, amazing drama. And then that avatar who is paying as much to see the clock end as they are
everything else,
as they are Robin van Persie, replaces the clock end.
Right.
You kind of wonder what's left. And I think, West Ham fans in my head are this group. This could be total nonsense.
I think there are still some. Yeah, I think West Ham. Yeah,
but
your point is right.
They've moved out to Essex, a lot of them. A lot of them don't go to the new grounds. And it feels like a different football club to the one it was probably 10 years ago, but definitely 40 years ago.
Check out the Wimbledon fan handing it out. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, well, more of us go than ever because we've had our whole Phoenix thing.
Percentage-wise, you are. Yeah. I get what you're saying, though. I also just think West Ham's ultimate issue was moving to the Olympic Stadium. It feels like a game in another place, or it doesn't feel like West Ham. And that was my issue with West Ham. And then on top of that, obviously, loads of people have moved to Essex. It kind of plays into the... I totally get what you're saying. Basically, disenfranchisement from the league.
And it's not an exaggeration, because I grew up in West London. Most of my friends are Chelsea fans. I probably got 10 messages when the Super League was announced in 24 hours saying, just in case this happens, what's the deal with watching Wimbledon?
Right.
Seriously, how do tickets work? Would you get a season ticket with me?
Wow.
Are there spaces near you?
I like that.
Lots of my friends who are Chelsea fans just thought, I'm out. This is...
Yeah, I get that. I think weirdly Chelsea fans felt strangely kind of into that. I wasn't quite sure why, but I get it. I like it. I like the energy. So anyway, they went through a process of ruling, whether they could still apply for a Super League, whether it was even legal for them to try and form a Super League. Originally, it was ruled that it was not legal, or that it was, if not legal, it wasn't. They were going against the contract, basically.
FIFA and UEFA basically said, you're not allowed to do this. And they said, It's European competition law. Of course we can.
Right.
So they said, hey guys, we're being stopped from doing our normal free market right. And they were told they're wrong. They were told you're not allowed to do this. But about half an hour ago, they appealed
As we record.
They appealed it.
Well, they didn't appeal half an hour ago. They'd appealed ages ago. But the announcement...
No. It happened very fast.
Yeah, they literally just went, so is this all good? And they went, actually, maybe you're right.
So anyway, the point is the Super League is now legal as a concept.
Right.
Which probably sounds right, however much you dislike it.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, as an idea, ideas are legal. Like, I get, obviously, there are contracts that are signed and all these kind of things. And, of course, they've also massively built their name off being part of these competitions, right? So, Real Madrid have built a huge name off being however many time champions of the Champions League and all these kind of things.
117 times.
Yeah, there's about that.
At this stage.
And so, I think, and same for Juve. So, I mean, Juve have won it. Yeah, they have.
Have
Juve ever won it?
I think
they have.
I mean, they must have done.
Yeah, they have.
But didn't they?
No, they have. Yeah, they have because they beat Liverpool.
Heysel.
They beat Liverpool.
Was that Heysel?
Yeah. That's not me being contrarian, by the way. I just forgot that.
Well, they haven't won it because Buffon never won it, and
they've not won it very recently.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that AC Milan Juventus penalty shootout.
Old Trafford.
Yeah, I think it was that one. That was a good penalty shootout. I think you wore a pink kit, and I remember being really struck by it as a kid.
In the European Cup final.
I like you, pink kit goalkeeper.
Oh, fine.
Yeah,
sorry.
not full pink.
I was going to say grow up.
Yeah, you could grow up, guys.
Not
Laurence, third
not
kit.
Laurence, but Juventus.
So basically, they now legally can apply for European Super League, or I guess kind of go around and canvass their local MPs for these kind of things and go, we can still do it, guys.
So here's my question to you, and I don't really understand this. An independent football regulator is coming in this country, and the Premier League sides are contractually not allowed to play a European Super League. It's done. So what are we doing? I mean, they obviously are confident these things are movable, but it's not been explained to me how they're movable.
I guess the Premier League might be a very specific...
but it doesn't work with... I mean, maybe, but it doesn't work without the Premier League.
I think it just works differently. I think the Premier League is definitely a massive pull, and I think being able to play English sides and specifically like take down... The English sides are seen as the giants right now because they have all the money, or that's the perception they have.
So United, Liverpool are two of the biggest 5 sides in the world, probably.
They've been the core of so many classic games in Europe.
And also, I mean, and City and Arsenal are probably the next batch.
City, Arsenal,
Chelsea.
then Newcastle. I think Newcastle are definitely in
Chelsea are somewhere in here too.
Yeah, and Spurs are sort of on the periphery. It's kind of irrelevant in a sense. Like what I'm really saying is the chance of the European Super League is back, but really what it is the chance for people to go, it's still on, there's still money for us to get, and guess what? The same week when Barcelona are struggling financially, the European Super League becomes not an opportunity that maybe they can take again. And Barcelona really are in some financial issues right now. And I'm not saying that with any judgment. It's just literally, I'm sure it's very difficult to run a football club as it is for anyone to run their normal life. But Barcelona are in dire straits at the moment, and I think they're in some real trouble, which in time, could see ultimate destruction of the club. So
Barcelona have dealt with it strangely because they activated these financial levers, which basically meant they were selling off revenue streams and stuff.
But those things haven't come as good as I think they thought they would.
But
in
the
that
interesting
time.
thing is they won the league, which means less apparently in Spain than it does here.
Yeah,
because if you won the league here,
we're massive.
It'd be massive. Whereas there, it's like, well, Real Madrid weren't very good, and
I do feel like that was part of it, and yeah, I agree. I feel like that was a huge a huge part of it was, oh well, you won it in a year when Real Madrid were just sort of, we were transitioning, sort of getting towards the end of a life cycle,
and you kind of have a 1 and 2 of winning it in Spain with an occasional Atletico Madrid's. Well, who did Benitez win it with?
Valencia.
Whereas here,
and Villarreal challenged for a little while. Remember that? I don't know, maybe you're slightly too young for that, but I remember Villarreal.
And Girona are top of the league.
Girona are top of the league at the moment, yeah.
They're Catalan. I was Googling this last night. They're Catalonian.
We should go there. I think that'd be a really good game.
Because, there was that journalist that did the 4 Madrid... we've talked about this.
Yeah.
The 4 Madrid home games in the weekend. Saturday, Sunday.
That is a good...
Man.
It's a fun one.
I think when the fixtures come out... next season, we should look and see what's possible.
So the point is broadly European Super League still possible, not possible with English clubs, but still good to see UEFA being challenged. And I think this is more of a tool than it is an end game. Peace is a way of being rather than a way to something.
It's like when you see Prince Harry sues News of the World, and the update is like, piece of evidence accepted, and it's like a marginal win. It's like a mini legal battle within the wider legal battle.
Yeah, and the wider legal battle sort of being for the heart of football anyway. Like, you know, I after watching that documentary that UEFA made, I don't feel that they really care about the heart of football in the way that other people do. And after seeing the Club World Cup structure, being like, yeah, why are you doing this again? But it is what it is.
It may well be, by the way, that football fans end up deciding it's like a university house where you have 5 studious people and 5 party people. And you go, guys, actually, should we just have the top floor be for the parties and the bottom floor be for studying?
I think that's it.
And I don't support one of the top 6 sides in the country.
Should you not make the bottom floor for parties and the top floor for studying?
No, let's make it weird. Let's make the noise travel all the wrong directions.
Yeah, and also like the foot stamps and stuff. Like, you stamp less if you're studying. You just sit there, sort of thing, or maybe lay there. I don't know. Depends how you study. But if you've got people upstairs and you can always hear, pass the gap, mate. Like, you don't want. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the thing
And
is,
do you know what I mean? Or,
when I was in my 4th year, and I wasn't partying as much as I was
Studying
in my first year.
Mm-hmm.
Even hearing like songs with lyrics, I would have taken
Right.
rather than just.
Wow. Yeah, that was a bit of a thing. Anyway, I think broadly European Super League back on, apparently. Although, who really cares? Let's talk a little bit. We'll finish on this podcast on atmospheres and games, people's investment in them. Talk to me about Jurgen Klopp's comments last night. I think he's been clipped up. Something only great people have happened to them. But what I mean is, like, he's been clipped up and sometimes paraphrased, or he's had, I don't know what the condensed, shall I say?
I saw the full video.
I saw the full video and I saw the full quote, and then most people are sharing a quote with a couple of bits taken out, which kind of change it more to Anfield shit, mate.
The thing is, Klopp says, "Oh, we need the fans. Give your ticket away if you're not up for the weekend against Arsenal." There's 2 interpretations. One is he's a wisdom tooth coming through and he's irritated and there. But more to the point, I think it's like every January, Pep takes a pop at someone.
Right.
It was the fans last year. It was Cancelo.
It was 4. There were 4 players that came back from the World Cup. Phil Foden, I think Calvin Phillips was one, João Cancelo, and I think maybe
John
Alvarez.
Stones?
Maybe John Stones, I think, might have been one. So maybe it was 5. And I think some of them...
Walker got dropped.
Kyle
in a
Walker
big
definitely
way.
got it. Yeah. So I think there were maybe more than 4. But maybe it wasn't Phil Foden. Maybe Phil Foden did the opposite. It was something to do with he dropped a lot of players and was very public about they've come back from the World Cup, they're not in good shape.
But, you know, Alex Ferguson used to take a pop at the fans. Guardiola takes a pop at the fans. Wenger took a pop at the fans. I think it's just a way of going... Klopp knows he could be in trouble on the weekends. Arsenal look really good. And they haven't played in midweek.
Yeah.
Arsenal could just turn up and be awesome. And he's thinking, let's get a little bit of a siege thing happening here.
Yeah.
And if I have to take a pop at someone, or say to the fans, come on. I think it's a storm in the teacup.
I totally agree. I also think, though, on the back of Pep saying that the Etihad isn't a very good atmosphere, or saying he's disappointed with it, I think a lot of City fans are obviously retweeting it and going, "Oh, see, their atmosphere is bad, same as ours," and it's a bit like the same thing, though. And, you know, obviously loads of people going, "Oh yeah, Anfield's a library, blah blah blah," which is weird if you've been there.
The problem is with Liverpool at the minute is they're quite good, and expectations and
Very
atmosphere are almost disproportionate, unless of course you're playing really well.
Yeah.
Like the formula for a shit atmosphere is high expectations, bad performance.
Yeah.
Arsenal, the Emirates, is nowhere near as good. Apparently, people will correct me, but my mates who have gone, but even as good as it was last year, because last year the expectations were lower, so it was like, Jesus, we are a side. Whereas the year before, when they weren't very good, or this year when expectations were a little higher,
Also,
it's not quite in that Goldilocks zone.
I also watched a TDK video, which was basically about how the style of football has changed at Arsenal, just, you know, marginally, but quite to quite a big end, where basically now the system is different. So it's different kinds of support. And I feel like stadiums almost need to learn the playbook almost.
It's more controlled now. It's a bit slower.
Yeah, and that's harder to get gassed up over. Like, if you're controlling a game and you're being super defensive, it's kind of harder to be like, yeah, especially when actually all your players are quality and they don't look to be struggling at all. Yeah, so they don't look like they need your support. When you're thrashing West Ham 5-1 at Anfield and every goal goes in, every long shot and complete validation of, first of all, the Manchester United theory that Manchester United definitely did the right thing to sit deep against Liverpool, because if they didn't, they would have got taken apart. But also validation that you can go to Anfield and try and play. But also weirdly, like David Moyes didn't really try and play.
David Moyes' jokes, I love him. He's literally like, I was saying, he's like me on Football Manager.
Right.
Where he's just like, I don't
Screw
care
this.
about the League Cup.
Who cares?
Let's just, he didn't play the kids really.
He played,
played a
that was
decent side.
pretty much a decent side. And Jared Bowen's goal was really good finish.
It's a conversation for another day, but if he's not on the plane for the Euros, he's very unlucky.
I feel like, yeah.
Because on the right-hand side, there aren't a million options.
It might just be that they want a different... I mean, I would love to see him alongside a Jude Bellingham and someone else front line. I think that'd be great fun.
The other shout, just to mention briefly, whilst we're touching on the Euros, I saw online is, we have this Rice, Bellingham, one more thing happening in the midfield.
Probably Hendo.
Probably Hendo, maybe it's Trent.
Yeah, probably Trent.
We don't know. But someone said Ross Barkley. And I was looking at it and being like, shit, well, if you could guarantee he'd play the way he's playing at the moment, he'd look absolutely fine in a midfield.
He would, maybe just too much crossover with Bellingham. That was my only issue.
I think he's a little deeper now for Luton, is the idea. Because they're all a little bit deeper.
Maybe too much crossover with Rice. I just think he's maybe slightly too central. He maybe needs to do a little bit more of the, as I would call it, doggies.
Oh, interesting.
So you need someone who's
on the toes.
Someone who's going to mop up a little bit and sort of just be a bit more like, I'm rough around the edges, which is Hendo, not Trent, but a midfield where there's a bit of fear. I think Ross Barkley might. I agree with the call. I just think Ross Barkley might not be that guy, and also hasn't obviously played.
Isn't it interesting how we have a luxury, an embarrassment?
It is an embarrassment.
Wide attacking midfield kind of players, and it's centre half and central midfield. It's looking a little bit light.
John Stones looks.
John
Stones
is
is
the one though,
world class.
But my only beef with John Stones, and I think he is world class, is at international level. He's never struck. Explain my instinct here. What is this?
I just think I also think is that he's never had the same partner as he does at City. I also think is that he is a great player, but likely on international duty, you're going to get exposed. Because not exposed as a bad player, but exposed to more direct attacks.
Amrabat looks great at international level because it's a bit slower. Maybe John Stones looks not quite as good because the things of his game that he has to do aren't the best bits.
Slightly cruder in a way in international football. And weirdly, I feel like City and certain players don't translate to the crude nature of international football. Does that make sense?
It's a little bit like how on FIFA, like the old Barcelona team never really translated in midfield.
Mm-hmm.
Like Xavi and Busquets were like, maybe you play Keita,
What was weird was I always found it funny. We'll leave in a minute. I just felt like Spain translated from the pitch to Barcelona and Barcelona vice versa, or Barcelona translated to Spain. I'd love it if that could happen for England. Bellingham, even Kane. Like Kane's scoring some absolutely sick goals for Bayern. Can we not learn something about that and sort of try and integrate some of these pieces?
So my question, I guess, is, has international football got worse, or has club football just elevated and the systems are now so tight that it looks worse?
The elevation of club football, I think, is a net positive, but in the short term, it's difficult for that to translate because other managers will need to catch up to that system and how to translate that from club to international. And I think going the other way, broadly, people only really care about the tournaments now because of the sheer level of games and the exertion it takes and all these kind of things. And also, you really need, if you're a top athlete, which all these guys are, to be on a very regular schedule. So to disrupt that and go away with England, I think sometimes people don't like that. Like they want to have sleep at home, this supplement, this sleep time, this, routine.
And if you're like Henderson for the last 5 years, you know that Salah stands over there and Alexander-Arnold stands over there. And then you look up and Rico Lewis isn't where Alexander-Arnold was. And you have to then now stop and think.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe one of the things that makes club football so high level is the fact they're not thinking.
Yeah, they're playing, as Klopp would say, with his gut.
Yeah, they just have muscle memory.
Mm-hmm.
They understand it. Whereas like when you watched England, North Macedonia,
Very little muscle memory.
Very little muscle memory.
Well, then Macedonia seem to have a lot of muscle memory in that sense. Like they seem to be very well drilled.
Yeah, so this is a second question. or second point, I think smaller countries, I mean geographically, but also in terms of like not as good at football, basically, tend to have the same and better players every time.
Sure.
So Scotland have built a team around the same 5 or 6 players, and they kind of don't really change. Kiefer Moore plays for Wales. It kind of doesn't really matter if he's a Bournemouth or if he's a Cardiff or whatever it is. So that you actually develop that over there. Whereas when England, it's chopping and changing every time. It's a Rashford, Grealish, Foden.
Which also speaks to the fact that if you have a good coach for your team, there is a bit like it's a weird arms race. Klopp sort of referenced it actually in his press conference, where he also slagged off and hurt all the Liverpool fans deeply. He basically said the difference is those little pieces of quality in the side, like those personal levels of quality. And a lot of the goals that Liverpool scored last night were just personal levels of quality. Even for West Ham, it was like Jarrod Bowen, moment of quality. Curtis Jones, slalom through, goal. Lovely strike from Dom Szoboszlai. Like, these aren't things that you can just kind of... the quality comes in just being able to do it in the moment. And broadly, tactically, sometimes you're just trying to fulfill your role. So that's interesting as well. I also think broadly with Klopp and his comments on the fans at Anfield, first of all, he's in front of the main stand. The main stand isn't really like a place to go for the... they're not like they're going to be the main supporters always. It's like the Kop is one end. You've got the Centenary, you've got the main. He's stood there for like 8 years now. He knows what the atmosphere is like. It's not like he's like, where are all the fans gone? So this is clearly an agenda. And I think it comes off the back of, I think, if you had a teacher in school who wanted to punish you collectively, which I think is the only way you can treat a set of fans in the stadium, they would do it collectively. They wouldn't just punish one child. So what he did after the United game was go, there was an expectation in the crowd that seemed almost a little greedy, almost a little ungrateful, almost a little, well, go on then, beat them. And maybe Klopp doesn't really like that as a feeling. It's sort of like, no, we have to be Liverpool in order to play as Liverpool.
And the great atmospheres Klopp has produced under his reign have been because there has been a little bit of a sense of
back to the wall.
Back to the wall. We've struggled for a number of years, possibly a number of decades compared to where we were in the 80s. Yeah. And this is the guy kind of, we're on our trajectory now. Yeah. Let's get behind this. And it's hard at the top, like to generate that.
Especially when there is massive expectation.
Look, we talk about this sometimes. Like musicians have this. The second album, very. If your the first album was about doing nights out in Sheffield, it's hard for your fifth album to be the same.
I don't know who you're talking about, but fair enough. I get what you mean.
When you're now a millionaire in LA with like a French girlfriend, it's very hard to generate the same.
Yeah, energy. You kind of need to make enough money from the Sheffield album to not give a shit by the fifth album, which some people have a theory about that. Yeah. Anyway, we still care. I still care about this. What's weird is, what album is this for you? What album are you on in your life?
This is Humbug. This is like...
Wow, so which number was that? Was that
2 or 3.
Yeah, I thought it was 3, but it might have been 2. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're still quite early on in the album. What you have to do is sometimes bring some fresh blood in.
I'll let you know when I get onto my pretentious Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino.
Right, which isn't...
You'll be like Jamie, like about the podcast.
Yeah, about that. Yeah. The table needs to be clean, mate. So yeah, I don't know what album I'm on. Hopefully it's not Donda. Yeah, we'll see.
Maybe a sample from Donda.
Maybe a nice sample. Yeah,
sample.
I think I'm definitely a sampler. No political statements from me here. Anyway, let's say thank you very much to everyone who watched. We really appreciate it. We covered the European Super League. Can I just ask, what, as an outside fan outside Liverpool, what did you think of Klopp's comments? Do you take them as literal, and do you even take the people seriously who go, ha, Anfield's crap? Like, have you ever been to Anfield?
Yeah.
What did you...
Well, I went to go see Dirk Kuyt score the winner against Man United in the FA Cup. 2-1 Liverpool in 2011, De Gea's first season. So it was an unbelievable atmosphere, as you can imagine.
Against Manchester United.
As an outside fan, I see it as him riling. I mean, like if you want to win points on Twitter, fine. But it's just him. Everyone does it. It's him going, Arsenal's a huge game. And if he thinks having a go at the fans might get 10% more out of the crowds, which will help the players.
And I think it needs to get 60. He said 40, 50, 60% better we need to play against Arsenal, which I kind of agree. Liverpool didn't even get out of second gear.
So I think with that context, I think he's just being clever. He's taking a pop to get a performance.
Agreed.
As opposed to being like, I hate you, Anfield.
Yeah, which he doesn't.
He's been there every year for 8 years. He loves the fans. He's got a great relationship with the city.
Yeah.
It's like when your mate's being a dick and you can say, oi, stop being a dick.
that was my only question. Should he not have done this in like the notes in a program?
It doesn't have the same effect.
No, it has to be in public, doesn't it?
You have to have a go at your friend.
Yeah, you do. You're right.
This is some serious toxic masculinity in front of everyone.
Yeah. You have to throw your mate under the bus.
Publicly.
It can't be private. Well,
No.
it can be, but sometimes your mate doesn't react very well to it privately, and so you go, fine, I'll do it in front of everyone.
It's also now Liverpool fans will feel a little bit of an edge.
Right.
Which is awesome.
Love that.
And Arteta isn't happy. I mean, look, are Arsenal fans happy he made the comments? The answer is no.
Right.
The Arsenal fans thinking,
God.
Arteta right now is blasting "You'll Never Walk Alone" on the training pitch.
I will say that actually, what's interesting is I think he's also trying to almost wipe the disc clean, because last season there was a nervous atmosphere at Anfield for Arsenal because it was the 2-2, which I was at. And it was a good rendition of "You Never Walk Alone," and there was a good atmosphere, but then they scored very early on. The team had to kind of play up, and then there was a good atmosphere. I think there's different ways of achieving that atmosphere. He could have said, I really liked the atmosphere at the end of the game last year or something, but maybe sometimes some people feel a carrot and stick is sort of two different things, which they are. Although you can't eat a stick. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching the podcast. Really appreciate it. Jamie, you've been fantastic. Good luck on ESPN.com today.
Thanks very much. And you yourself on ITV.
Yeah, exactly. See you guys again real soon right here on the Laurence McKenna channel on The Graphic, which we'll be launching in the next couple of days, and on the podcast feed. Go listen to it on Spotify and Apple Music. We really appreciate it. Apple Podcasts.
Bang.